Kevin Walton is here. He's a Sacred Son leader. He's also the leader of the light beings.
When the other men saw that, they finally had an opportunity to see what it means to meet someone from love and just how active, not passive, how dedicated, not sacrificing, how powerful and confronting, not combative or conflicted love actually is. And that was a huge perspective shift for the brothers. And it was really powerful in that sense. Every experience is a constant offering and invitation into greater engagement with all that is. And one of the things that transition helps us do is recognize the value of time spent, the value of attention given, the value of connection in relational dynamics to all that is. And that is the part of the spirit of living in love.
Peace, family. In 2024, Sacred Sons is hosting events all around the globe. We are in the United States and Canada, Mexico, all across Europe, and this year coming to Australia, connecting men to their hearts, leading men to their purpose. Join us at an upcoming EMX for 4 days of connection, confrontation, celebration where brotherhood is the medicine and anything is possible. Coming up next, we're heading all the way to EMX Perth, Western Australia, February 8th through 11th, and then EMX in Kugel, Australia, February 15th through 18th. This one, I believe, is sold out. So Australia, join us in Perth, and then coming all the way back across the pond to one of my favorite locations, EMX, Tepoztlan, Mexico, February 29th through March 3rd. If you're one of our Spanish-speaking brothers, get to EMX in Tepoztlan, hosted by our brothers Manu and Yvonne. After that, EMX San Diego, California, March 7th through 10th. This one is led by Kale Kahi and Uncle Vince Matoska Chafin. EMX San Diego will be back at our home at Liberty Arising, followed by our Leadership Summit. Looking forward to seeing all of the Sacred Sons leadership back out at our home at Liberty Arising. After that, we're back in Texas, EMX North Zolch, Texas, May 2nd through 5th. For any of the Texas brothers who missed out on the previous EMX, now is your chance. And for the first time, we're going to be in Wales, UK, May 2nd through 5th. And EMX Brennan, Washington, bringing it all the way back home, May 9th through 12th. 2024 is lit. If you are interested, please go to sacredsons.com. Click on EMX, look at the dates, go to the event closest to you. At checkout, use the code, all caps, Brotherhood for 10% off. Claim your spot, and we will see you on the other side. Much love, fam. Peace, family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. Brothers and sisters, our guest today needs no introduction. He is known. Source Radiance, aka Kevin Walton, is here. What's up, my brother? Good to see you. I miss you.
Me too. I miss you too, bro. Always.
You were just out in the field at EMX in Floral City, Florida, co-leading with our brother Hunter. How was that?
It was epic, bro. It was epic. So powerful. The land held us beautifully. All the men came in committed to wanting to meet something, tap into something, and move with something. And there was such a, man, the container was just so solid and held well. And Hunter and I danced and weaved together beautifully. And just the way that the brothers came in, both committed to meeting stuff and getting stuff moved, of not wanting to take things they walked in with them going into the next stage of their lives, and the way that they showed up in respect and honor of each other and the requests, especially during sacred combat. And we had such a range. It was so powerful, the considerations of the mindfulness, but that edge willing to be met. And it was a beautiful dance, bro, this weekend. I love this work. I love it.
I love this work. I'm interested in this part about not leaving with some of the baggage, with some of the stories they came with. So let's drop into that today. with our guest. He's a Sacred Son leader. He's also the leader of the Light Beings.
Light Beings.
I decide. And if you're deep into it, you know he's an actor, also known as Aaron on the BT hit series Sisters. Kevin, Source, Radiance, Walton.
Oh man, I love you, bro.
Man, it's so good to see you. And we're still here. You know, we were just rapping about how all this started, and we're still here. 2024. Let's go. I wanna jump right back into that EMX, because you know you're Sacred Sons leader. What are you seeing in the men in 2024 that maybe we weren't seeing back in 2019?
Man, and especially to start off the year, like, well, the Gregorian calendar year, right? We'll talk about it later. But to drop in, right, in January with this, they came in like that determination of, because even some of the brothers said it, like, I don't fully know the scope of what all this was, but I knew it was time, and I had to come. And I just know that what's in here, there's something that wants to move, and I don't want to walk out of here with this anymore. Like, I really want to, and that, to me, it was cohesive in that way, especially in my team. And, you know, Hunter had beautiful experience in his team too, and the men were rocking. And for all the ones that I connected with, when we got them all together, it was all the same resonance. But the cohesion of that tone, right? Where even when brothers were kind of had their moments of hesitation, they could see it. And then, you know, whenever I pick up on that, I'll speak to those things to get them to like see the perspective and understanding of what's alive in them. And you know, I make that statement, like, you did not show up here to stay the same. You did not show up here to leave. And, you know, like, if you're here, there's a dedicated opportunity for you to receive what you're asking for, so you can start moving in this way.
And that change, it's right there.
Yeah, bro.
It's like right on the other side of one step, of one emotional release, of one breakthrough that's witnessed by the group.
100%. And that's what it was. Like, some of the brothers who didn't have the opportunity to step in, it was so poignant that they even expressed it like, yo, I got it. Like, that, the same thing this brother went through, it was me, and I have this thing. And next day, something he committed to, did it. And it was like, it was just on. And even the brothers that collectively, you know me, and wake up early beyond what our scheduled time is to tap into some things and start energy. And I think literally all the brothers did it, because obviously it's mandatory for my team. But even Hunter's team was like with it. And the way that energy cohesively established was just so powerful. And the notion of, whether it's one emotion, one perspective shift, one thought shift, one threshold touched enough for their defenses to come alive and them to present them so that we can meet them and get them to move so they can have that expansiveness to just that thing. It was like that all weekend long, dude. And yeah, and I think for in this age, when I think back to 2019, there was such a range, right, of brothers that have the things they wanted to meet, but the notion we talk about of the whole point in terms of the sequence, and I obviously talk about this a lot in Creatorhood, is there is to receive what the energy is that's alive for us, right? That comes alive, emotion, pain, whatever it is. We have to be able to receive it, let it come through the way it's offering itself. Then there's the process part, and then there's the redirect, right? Because once that energy is alive, it has to be directed somewhere. And their willingness to dance in that was as fluid and effortless as in this container as I've seen it. And I think that would be the biggest difference from here now, 2019, because obviously our presence, this movement, the notion of what this is far more prominent in the field for people's vision. And now there's been enough of us going through it. But even with the new ones we had show up who still had no concept of this and their life doesn't function like this, even for them, that process energetically was just there. And that, and being able to get that to happen was felt more effortless this time.
Let's talk about the redirect. I think this is very important, AKA commitment or recommitment, really. And so it's important, like you said, anytime we release something, anytime we give something up, anytime we commit to changing an aspect of our life, we have to replace it, right?
Yep.
We have to replace the thing that we let go of. Otherwise, the thing comes right back. So in these spaces, how do we get men recommitted to their lives in a way that sticks? This is what's important, in a way that sticks.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's, I did a convo on the foundation of manhood on Thursday night after our opening ceremony, after dinner, to really present to the men the notion of the foundation of their beingness, and being able to touch them in that way that they have to take an honest look and reflection offers such a powerful foundation. So when it comes to them committing, because the one thing I kept emphasizing with them is the masculine principle and all of its qualities and traits. And for us that are men and males, masculine led, that means that we are living a life where those foundational elements are at the forefront of how we move, in conjunction with our feminine, obviously, because it's a relationship of both principles inside of us. But the emphasis that upholds the proper mechanics of what it means to be a man and manhood, which is also the maturation of living in those qualities and attributes. Because when we're a boy or a child, we're in the process of developing the understanding of them. When we become and ideally in a healthy way, we're now living in the more maturation of the application, because now we're taking that home base of familial or communal living to the global scale of living it out right for the civilization. And so we spoke to that. And so when I think of the notion of the redirect for anyone on a personal level, the way to touch them and for them to touch it within them is that once that energy comes alive and they can recognize what that pain point is, right? You confront the notion of what the pain point is in a way that acknowledges it's okay, you have this experience, okay to own it, but it's not proper mechanics for you to stay there, right? Because you're more than that moment. And so then once we get that energy open, then it becomes tapping into the notion of what matters to them and what values live inside of them, even if they're not consciously aware of it until this moment. It's then taking that energy that they feel the passion and intensity around, that then gets a line of sight, and that practical application of being able to see it, right? Because you have to be able to see it as a leader and as the masculine principle. There's always a line of sight to redirect the energy. And that's how it gets implemented, that you can see it and feel it. And then there's that ownership part of the empowerment, and then the reflection of the brothers. All of that cohesively then holds both the sovereign individual that they have to be able to start building upon, and then the community in reflection of which they are a part of playing a role with at large. And I found that every time you sync that up, or I sync that up with them, it holds greater. And then we keep reminding them because obviously this is not about, say, shaming someone into change, because that doesn't sustain. It's being able to confront them with what's happening, let them know they're held and accepted in it, but what won't stand in out of integrity or misalignment gets then redirected to what it means to live greater and uphold that mantle. And the recognition of that for the brothers in this time and the intensity to match it really landed. And so now obviously we'll start to see how it sticks. But to me, I found that that's always the greatest way, is because especially for men, even if they have their initial reactivity moments, love to be called out on their bullshit, love to be confronted with possibilities and upheld to a greater standard. And I see that with these men this time around, like they wanted it and wanted to drop what was eating them up inside, whether it was an experience.
Wanted to be honest, like wanted to tell the truth, bro.
Yeah, bro, legitly. And so we had them and they put some of the stuff that they could be living in shame for a long time with out. And the way that I obviously the way we hold it. And when the other men saw that, they finally had an opportunity to see what it means to meet someone from love, and just how active, not passive, how dedicated, not sacrificing, how powerful and confronting, not combative or conflicted love actually is. And that was a huge perspective shift for the brothers. And it was really powerful in that sense. But being able to then give them the vision and have them like mold the words and the embodiment that upholds this next mantle for themselves is a huge way of starting to lock it in, because it's a body, mind, spirit relationship. They have to feel it in their bodies. They have to have the clarity of it in their minds, and they have to have the connection to the spirit. And that's how it sticks. And then it just becomes a communal support with it.
I like this concept of from shame to embodiment. So I'm saying, like, from shame to embodiment, we're able to transmute these things in this time. Like you said, so many amazing things in there, which is like men like to be called out on their bullshit. Men want to get clear and honest and into right action. I'm also witnessing this, and called in, right? That's the big flip here.
Exactly. And I think that's such an important also shift from the notion of, the concept of being called out. It's like really called in. And I think of it because I noticed that when I had a crash course in raising teenagers with my godchildren, when it came to the son, he didn't have a lot of masculine guidance around him. And we bumped up against those edges, right? To give him parameters he didn't have before. And it strengthened our bond in a way, because as kids, we still want that, right? We're full of chaos of creative potential, and we want to know where parameters are, because it starts to uphold a greater sense of structure, which is innate in the nature of the masculine, right? Like stability and progress is innate to the masculine dynamic within relational frameworks. And that aspect of being called in, that it's like, instead of the notion of being like, you're on some bullshit, go stand over there, it's, come here. You know what's up. You know what's happening. You know we're out of integrity. Let's fucking go. And they're like, huh? Yep. Because it's like you are being embraced in the confrontation to then be molded and redirected to the truth of yourself, not cast aside or branded as whatever, right? And that notion, and to me, the embodiment is how we walk, right? And so I think of it as moving from the misaligned embodiment to the aligned embodiment, because anytime we're holding this condemnation of ourselves, we're already in the contradiction of our existence. And because our experiences of misalignment are not invitations to shit on ourselves, they're invitations to take an honest look at where we are and how to adjust back to proper functioning in our design. And that's that essence that we innately feel. So when men get confronted in it, the truth of them inside actually is like, yeah. And even if they initially have those defenses, because it happens sometimes, it doesn't change the fact that inside of them, where the truth lives, they do want it, because they could feel beyond their bullshit in the stories where this aspect of them lives that is yearning to come through, so they can, just like you say, take that proper action and live in the greater standing of that leadership and embodiment of framework, because it's innate, it's there, you know what I mean? And it's vital, bro.
I think this is one of the differences that Sacred Sons brings to this work, is like we're extending these invitations. And when we're doing deep shadow work, it's almost like it can't be forced. There's no boot camp. There's no like, we're not going to beat you down. We're going to invite the shadow to come into the light and to be seen. And there's a big flip there. And so that's what's happening on the individual level. And since you mentioned the global scale, that's where I want to take it. So let's take it from the micro to the macro, from the individual to the collective, because this generation has shadows that we do not want to continue to take with us.
100%. I think it's twofold based on where we are as a species, right? It's the same way we'll end up building the next iteration of our civilization. It's always going to be twofold, because there is the place of building the structure from alignment, or what I would say is the proper foundation of consciousness, right? Which is unity consciousness. And then there is the implementation of that into what's already been built that will eventually be crumbling, and then we siphon it over.
For anyone who isn't really clear, how would you define unity consciousness?
Awesome. So unity consciousness is the conscious awareness, living in the conscious awareness and perspective of recognizing the unified connection of all life, right? It's not the uniform connection of all life. It is the unified operation of all life. So in unity consciousness, we recognize all things connected in creation in their varying aspects, right? And that's the concept of like multiplicity, so to speak, right? Where there's a singularity and the multiplicity. What that then reveals is what unity actually is all diverse elements working together as one, not everything being the same. And that's actually the idea of culture if it was built in alignment, right? But when we've operated for, like you said, the consciousness of the times, which I would also add to that as the times where we lived from a certain scope of awareness, right? That as we grow in awareness, we start to recognize the greater picture, which is just a part of the journey of existing.
It's just a part of evolution, right?
100%, right? Because that's what evolution is, the constant expansion and exploration of creativity and consciousness. That's literally what evolution is.
I get to experience that with, you just saw my 2-year-old come in but with the babies. It's like, hey, this is the room you were born in. And it's like, hey, here's the whole house. Hey, here's the backyard. Here's the neighborhood. Here's the city. Here's the world. Here's the universe. Here's your place in the universe. And now we're at the unknown.
And it's always that next edge of the unknown, right? Because they're like, what's out there? And then it's like, oh, now this is known. And that's exactly what it is. Every facet that we expand into is a recognition of just how big the game is we're playing, but then not only how big the game is we're playing, how big we actually are to play it. And that is the expansion of consciousness. You feel me?
Yeah. Speak to the importance. Speak to the importance, because I know there's people out here like, it's all meaningless. Nothing means anything. Like, I love that you said the importance, because I am one who believes that the human experience, that this life in all of the universe is a highly sought after experience. I don't believe in this idea that we're here on some type of a prison planet or something like this. I feel like there is great, immense value and beauty in this life, and that it's meaningful through and through.
100%. Like, there is a universal meaning and purpose to life and consciousness, which I call the prime directive of life and consciousness. And then there's us as the meaning makers of every event within that framework. And part of being that is the actual structure of the game of life in physical reality, which is, so the prime directive of consciousness and life is the constancy of living, being, and accessing full actualization, right? Full actualization of self. That means the nature of our design being fully expressed. Now, that's the overall concept, and that concept, say, being spirit in existence, becomes the multiverse exploration of unlimited creative potential. Now, if we take that concept and just shrink it down for a moment into our universe, then our physical reality becomes the exploration of what does it mean to reach full actualization through the framework of material matter and time frame. And so then we choose to experience life as a human being, which is a very specific design, as all designs are, not random, very specific. And so the game becomes what I call the game of limitation, which is unlimited creative potential and love, exploring every possible way it returns to what the great remembering of itself, right? So this game of life is not this prison planet bullshit. It's none of the fear-based functioning, because life isn't built upon fear. Fear became a concept based on the lack of awareness of the truth of the scope, but that's part of the game. Right. It is built on synergy and the full acceptance of all that is. So all of life is actually built on the framework of, and this is like not a cliche, on the framework of love. And what the framework of love is how everything is held within the all of creation. So you know my definition of love being the absolute acceptance of everything, right? So in order for everything to be held, for energy to vibrate in any form, for us to witness things, is because love is what's holding it, the ability of energy to accept itself as that vibrational resonance. Now, if you keep playing that out fractically and from the micro to the macro, all you keep seeing is that happening in every scale. So energy coming together to express in a form, and then in that form being a part of the larger picture of all forms, all moving in the direction of being fully actualized. And because of that, the framework is already held in the alignment of all creation. And therefore within it, every time and the reason why, I talk in terms of alignment and misalignment, not good, bad, right, wrong, positive, and negative, because there's nothing you will do that removes you from the framework of existence. Nothing.
So when you say alignment, what are you aligning it to?
I say alignment is the proper relating of creative energy. So, and you can liken this to the notion of health, right? All illness or unhealth is the improper relating of the flow of energy, period. Then we can break that down into whatever looks to physical, emotional, mental, physical health, all of those facets. All the concept is telling us is when something is healthy, right? It's not the absence of illness, because illness isn't the foundation of how life is built. The life is built on how it is something operating the way it is designed to operate, period. That's our reference point. Am I functioning mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually the way I am designed? If I am now a healthy being. And then all I keep living into is greater iterations of that capacity. If I'm not, somewhere that energy, mentally, physically, emotionally, spirituality is untouched by our shit and physical reality. So spirit is always healthy, but it's our ability to live in the awareness tuned into that design. Mentally, physically, emotionally, if any part of me lacks the awareness of the notion of the design, I will then play out some form of misalignment. And then the misalignment is simply where that energy or the design is improperly relating to the structure. The moment that happens, everything in life is designed to signal it for it to return to proper order. It's that simple. But if we lack the awareness of that, we'll feel a sensation that feels off-putting to the nature of the design. And instead of going, oh, something's off-putting, let me make an adjustment, we go, something's off. What does that mean? I'm off. Story, because I lack the awareness of what experiences are telling me. And now we create, because our creative energy is always on nonstop. So if we don't catch that, all we do is keep creating from it until it gets too loud or fills out as far as it can go, that we then have no other choice but to do that.
Well, what's interesting about what you're saying, and we're going to go in this like quantum space here, but the disease that we feel when the energy is not flowing is also experienced externally. It's like you're driving your car, the check engine light's on. You're like, cool, I'll deal with it later. And then the next day you're like, your shit's like, boop, 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 boop. And you're like, no, it's all good. I'll deal with it later. And the next day you're like, boop, 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 boop. You know, it's progressively, that flow of energy is like, hey, it's getting louder and louder and louder. And what I wanted to say here is like, the car analogy is an analogy, but it's also connected in this framework. Like it's because in unity consciousness, everything is connected. The car not being tended to is connected to the all of the experience.
Exactly.
You know, it's silly, but I like to bring in like these little pieces that are relative that help people understand, I think.
Exactly. And that's the thing to remember. There's no separation to it. And I had an experience, I've had many of them, but I had an experience once where I tapped into that framework of being source and actually witnessed and saw. And there's certain things I still haven't found words to describe yet, because language just isn't invented to hold that capacity. Where I actually could experience every facet of what it meant to be unity consciousness, where there was no separation. There was no separation from thought to thought signals, to framework of mouth, to forming of words, to then air pockets, to then speak, to then the spoken in the field to be heard, where it was like every framework. So the car, our bodies, our houses, in our relationships, where there is no separation, because there is no such thing as like paradoxes and duality consciousness, even though they're just belief frameworks. It's all relationship, right? So when people think something is and not, that's not actually a thing. It's the relationship of contrasts and frameworks in existence. So like,
give me an example.
Right. Perfect. So when you think of the notion of, say, the concept when people say everything, life is everything and nothing, right? That concept, the theology of that, right? And then I'll break this down in a concept of a practical.
Nothing doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
there is no nothing.
when people think about the idea of being no thing, like really surrendering all the stories, what they're actually saying is, I am wanting to, or the intention of, dissolving into the fullness of all that is. Because everything, just like we talk about space, right? Space is full of unlimited creative potential.
So did you just say that nothing was everything?
Nothing was everything. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because life is about distinction, right? It's all distinction. And so the same concept, here's another example. When you think of the paradox of security, right? And safety, where you're like, I want this to be fully secure, but anyone who's really determined to get into anything is there, like gated communities, locking the doors at home, right?
The border.
The border, right? All those concepts. There is the idea of containment, and then there's the idea of expansion, right? All borders, all lines, all parameters are simply a framework of distinction, just like the air, right? The air inside my home is a different distinction of experience than the air outside. There's no separation to the air, yet I can experience two different frameworks of the air. That is the relationship of all life. And so when we think of life in terms of relationship, the whole dynamic of our experience changes. And just like you spoke to the car, right, as an example, it's exactly that. Because this is how life talks to us. If something is out of alignment, it will be presented through some form of experience as close to the inside first, and then it just grows outside, right? If I don't listen to an energetic in my body emotionally, it will transfer to physical. If I don't listen to it in the physical body, right, that will magnify. If I don't pay attention in the physical body, it'll show up in a relational dynamic. If I don't address it in a relational dynamic with a person, it'll show up when I'm in nature in the wilderness. It'll show up in my car. It'll show up in my home. Because how reality creation works is everything in existence wants us to win. It wants it because remember, the framework of consciousness in life is to be fully actualized. So we're either living in that path from every choice we make, or we make choices in contradiction of that, which is the misalignment, and everything is going to tell us that there's a misalignment for the adjustment. Nothing happens in misalignments for it to ruin our day. It's all for the purpose of seeing us live the embodiment of the design, because everything is flowing to truth, to love, to the fullness of life, never against it.
Just for the sake of the conversation, aren't misalignments necessary in order for there to be alignment? That's like you can't have the hot without the cold, or like, you know what I'm saying?
Actually, no. Think of it as the scale of conscious exploration. So when we are maturing, like to be self-actualized is to reach full maturity, right? And so life isn't about experiencing alignment and misalignment. Life is about being fully mature and fully actualized. If part of the framework in this dimension of reality is to experience how quickly we remember, then that means in this framework, creating misalignments is part of the journey of being fully self-actualized. Eventually, we can get to the point in consciousness and awareness where we're so attuned, we no longer have to create misalignment to get our attention. We just start living greater in the framework of embodiment to explore what else is possible. And so in this particular life, part of the journey is us expanding in awareness. And so we do that through experience, through access, through the journey. And that's why misalignment's a part of it. But life isn't dualistic where you don't have the good without the bad. Like those are all concepts developed to want to make sense or be at ease with experiences we have. But life is actually very specific. The whole framework is how quickly we become fully self-actualized, but there's no pressure to the time frame because time is relative and malleable. It just doesn't go in reverse. But because the flow of life doesn't go in reverse. And that's the only reason why time doesn't, but time's a spiral anyway. And that's a whole nother conversation. We'll talk about that later. But the framework of it is that this whole journey is, if I was to explore lacking the awareness to all that is, how quickly would it take me to remember it in full scope and maturity of my design? And then we show up as little children and we go, let me explore this thing. What's this dimension? And we explore. And this is happening in every scale and dimension of creation. It just has its own framework. And so on this journey for us, the whole purpose of the game is to keep expanding into the point where all creative energy then is fully held responsibly and just lives to what else is possible in capacity. Part of the journey of that right now in this current junction of consciousness is recognizing where we step off track with that and how quickly we make the adjustment, because the idea is we get so solid about it, we just start to pick up on it in the subtle, because that is part of maturation, right? That's part of mastery. And then after we pick up on the subtle, then we just start living out right. And then the whole framework of life and being human changes. We convince ourselves and justify a lot of things in the human condition as a way to just find some sort of ease with it. And so we use euphemisms and statements like that, like, well, you got to have the good with the bad. It's a balance, not being open to the insights being offered in every experience to make necessary adjustments. We just relegate it to the idea that that's how life is. And it's not. That's lazy. That's lazy awareness. That's lazy thinking. And we're so much more than that.
If there's no duality, is there life and death? Or is there only one?
I love it. And I love this shit. I'll talk about this shit all day, bro. There is only one. However, part of the exploration of physical reality is the experiential resonance of what it means, because we also, right, our foundation is beyond form, but we experience the idea of form, which means because we're bigger than this dimension, we have to keep exploring greater ranges of capacity as spirit. So then the idea of transitions, which is most often referred to as death, because is the notion of what it means to transition and shift through different forms within a given dimension. And so death then becomes another explorative process of creative energy in life experience. And that is the relationship of it. And so, but the idea of duality is a belief system, not the structure of existence, because life is life no matter what. And even like, and life is, and everything is used, right? So when we take form, right, you have all the cellular and alchemical development to take a portion of our consciousness and exist in this framework. When we shift framework, that form's not necessary. So what does it do? Decomposes, breaks down. Now we have an experience of it just based on chemical existing in the structure of existence. But the body does what it's designed to do, right? Everything dissolves, it goes back into certain frameworks, and everything gets used in a different way because it's still all forms of life. You know what I mean? It's a constant transitioning of energy all the time. And so even that is an experience, because for everyone involved, for the person that transitions, and for all of us who experience the transition of others, especially the close-knit, intimate connections of friendship or family or those dynamics, and then the world at large, all of it offers something, because again, part of the framework of life is being mature and fully actualized. And one of the most important things is presence, being fully engaged with life at all times, because we are fully involved in our lives, right? We're not on the sidelines of it. So that means that every experience is a constant offering and invitation into greater engagement with all that is. And one of the things that transition helps us do is recognize the value of time spent, the value of attention given, the value of connection in relational dynamics to all that is. And that is the part of the spirit of living in love. You know what I mean? And so all experience, no matter what it is a constant offering for the invitation of stepping greater into all we are and experience. And that's the same thing. So just like, we were talking about the car or our bodies when things are signaling when misalignment is, it's the same thing on a global scale of consciousness. If a civilization enslaves, traffics humans, right? If civilization creates con artists and government, cover-ups and all the frameworks of things that represent misalignments of a unit, all of that is the signal in the car telling you something's off, the aching in your shoulder when there's something to be addressed, right? The buildup of energy and like some illness based on the emotional stifling. It's all the same thing. Signals that something is off in the flow of energy for the invitation for us to make the proper adjustment to keep living life forward. And so all of this is a reflection. But the reason why it gets bigger is because our creative energy doesn't stop. And everything is going to keep guiding towards truth, whether people like it or not. And so it will start small for the adjustment to happen quick. And if it's ignored, it gets louder because whether we like it or not, we're going to make the adjustment. The invitation is we become so mature and aware, we make the adjustment consciously. And that's part of the experience of being human, is we've chosen to make this iteration as opposed to trees and, the animal kingdom and creaturehood. Part of our journey is the exploration of consciousness through choice. And that choice happens also in relation to everything. That's why we have a relationship to trees and the animals and the waters, because it's all intertwined. But part of our species is the exploration of consciously choosing it every day. And we're going to eventually, whether we like it or not.
Consciously choosing it from the experience of being separate from it. Because our experience that we're in is that I'm separate from the tree out there, or I'm separate from my glass of water. The water binds us all.
The belief in separation.
Yeah, the belief in separation.
Because we're not, right? It's just, it's, and this is what I mean by distinction. There's no, unity consciousness reveals that there is no separation, there's only distinction. So the belief is I'm separate from the tree.
Okay. So bring it from, now we're out here on the grand scale. Let's bring it back down to that individual, to that brother who's listening right now. What's a step one? What's a way that there's a man who's got that pain, like you said, the pain in the shoulder. Like, what's that trying to tell me? What's a practice? What's a method? What's something that we as men and women can do to get started, to get back into alignment?
First and foremost, strengthening our relationship to connection. And what I mean by that more specifically is that connection is standard in existence, right? We're already in it. If we ever feel disconnected because we're closing something down, foundationally, if every day we were to start our day off just tuning in to what's in our mind, what's in our body, right? Our senses, we already strengthen our relationship to self and our relationship to the thing that brought us into creation in the first place.
Through awareness. Is it through awareness that we strengthen it?
100%.
Yeah.
Because the idea is, again, we start living consciously aware of this relationship. And so if we take that time, especially in solitude and in silence, we start living in a greater conscious awareness of the most intimate place in us. Because everything is a degree of intimacy, right? Like, we have the most intimate relationship with ourselves, and through that relationship with ourselves, the most intimate relationship to Source, God, the All, whatever people call it. Then the next iteration of that's the closest intimacy, is usually family dynamics or a lover, partner, right? And children, because that's the next iteration of how close something is to us. Then you get to friendships and all the things that expand, right? And sometimes friends can be as close as the family dynamic, but it's that relationship. So starting off with the foundation, because all relational dynamics reflect different variations of relationship to self, right? The relationship to self will tell you how connected or how aware of the connection to the divine you're in, to what capacity. And so practically, if a brother is sitting here in any facet, emotional pain, struggling to make sense of the concept of loss, or physical pain because there's something aching in the body, being able to start with just exploring oneself and going, well, what can I start to do to adjust this? Perhaps I could start tending to my physical body's strength and mobility, because that is a fundamental part of the human body, right? Perhaps I can start to, and even to say if someone's sitting in a hospital or they experience paralysis because of a experience they had, that becomes the offering of their journey. So now they have to explore the nature of the relationship of their body to what is functioning and what is not, and what does that mean to explore it? Because again, experiences offer constant invitations into what's possible. And that's when you'll see people who have, certain experiences and they'll go, but I didn't let me stop me from da-da-da-da. That's part of their journey to represent that for us, right? And so for anyone listening, it's the most fundamental foundational thing you could do is get to know yourself greater, everyday body, mind, spirit. What energizes you, what frightens you, what you're passionate about, what it means to actually feel and hear and listen and taste and smell. Take time with recognizing your relationship to food. Take time with recognizing your relationship to all the elements. And all of that starts giving people a greater foundation in their own sovereignty. And then even to discover what sovereignty means.
Let me say this, because your initial response was connection, right? And even for someone whose diet and exercise and everything is dialed in tight, they'll still have that nagging pain, injury, whatever that is, right? And I know it to be true in my experience, that beyond all the drinking clean water, eating all your vitamins and all that stuff, have the hard conversation. I believe that a lot of the pain that we store is because we didn't say the thing to the person that we need to say. We didn't tell the truth when we needed to tell the truth. I just feel like this sometimes can be so much more freeing and an easier access point than changing your entire, routine.
Yeah, it's all connected, because now you're going into the relational dynamic, right? And that is beyond the self.
I think the relational dynamic is it's the connection piece.
Yeah, it's twofold, right? So connection is happening from the inside out, right? And so in order for people to be honest with others, they have to be honest with themselves.
First.
Right? 100%. That's where honesty starts, right? It's foundational, right? If you don't know how to sit with yourself in the mirror and acknowledge yourself and the decisions you're making and what's happening inside your body, fuck you going to do when you step outside in the world? And here's another thing, just on top of what you just stated. The conversations are only hard because we've been so dishonest as a population, right? They're just, instead of the concept of having hard conversations, the whole concept is just have honest conversations, honest, transparent conversations. But because we've lived with such dishonesty, with lack of awareness, we now consider those conversations hard because it's uncomfortable. Eventually, and this goes back to maturation, eventually we'll mature into being like, that's just how we function. So now there's no more concept of radical honesty, radical truth, radical vulnerability. It's just, oh, here's the natural design of our existence. I feel an emotion. I let the emotion move through me. I have conversation, what the emotion is related to. Now I don't have pain. Now you know what I mean? It's like that. It's that fundamental. It's like ABCs of existing. And to what you're describing, that is it. If I don't know how to sit with myself in silence and be with my thoughts, my feelings, my beingness, my relationship with myself is already weak, which means my relationship with others is also weak. So then if I can look at myself in the mirror and be honest, now I'm showing up at everyone else and having those conversations. But that happens because I'm willing to be consciously aware of what's happening inside of me as it relates to emotions and feelings, which that is the other part when it comes to dealing with ailments, because emotions, no one exists without emotional frameworks. Everything, our choices are all based on emotion. It's just, but people have a misconceived concept of what emotions are, because there are mature functioning emotional dynamics. And then there's the way we experience it in misalignment. There's no such thing as positive or negative emotions because they all offer something important. It's just knowing what's saying what, and not getting caught up on the judgment of, I don't like this sensation, so I don't want to feel it. It's, this sensation is telling me something. It's probably wise for me to listen, so then I can shift it into something more. And that goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of then redirecting energy to utilize it. And that happening, we would then show up having more honest conversations on a regular basis. The reason why it's the struggle to have honest conversations is because we don't know how to be with the sensations we quote unquote don't like. And then judge them as negative, and then that fucks us up, because now we live in a world that's emotionally unhealthy, because we've convinced ourselves there's such a thing as positive and negative emotions, and I have to avoid the negative and then have to just focus on the positive. And now you have a whole culture that is severely emotionally immature.
Yeah. Yeah. I bring this up because I don't want someone to walk away thinking like, well, if I just bang this out in the gym, bang these weights out, it's going to be all good. Because the part about being honest with oneself and the knowledge of oneself, I think this is the ultimate pathway. And so just like we're starting, when we're witnessed in these things, now I feel like we accelerate the transformation. There's something about those weekends or these experiences of being witnessed in the emotion that now accelerates like, whew.
Yes. Because that's part of the comprehensiveness of life experience. And when we allow ourselves to be witnessed, we live more liberated within our being. That's the point of the witness. Now, all of this, to what you're talking about, whether going to the gym, sitting with oneself, it all has to do with the energy behind the action, right? And then we call that intention, right? If my intention is to be seen in my pain because I want validation, that changes nothing, right? But if I choose to be vulnerable, to express honestly, to be witnessed for the sake of my own liberated expression, now we're talking. Because every time we do it with the intention of wanting to be received, we're actually reaching outside of ourselves, just like going to the gym because I don't like the way I feel inside. I'm just gonna go work out. And that never touches what the issue is. The same thing happens in these weekends. If you don't get honest about what's happening for the sake of wanting to live greater within yourself, you still won't touch it. And so that same thing. So just like you stated, if people can eat whatever they want and work out however they want,
or meditate, or
meditate. Yes. Because people use meditation as an escape too. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking
about. Exactly. Right. Like you won't reach outside to get what you're not letting yourself access within, period. So and that's why I'm saying sitting down with oneself is the foundation, because you're having to then be with everything that's happening in here. And if you can be with it in the truest way possible, you start living then outward, and suddenly the gym becomes an exploration of tapping into more of what's possible physically. Doing martial arts becomes a way of tapping into more of what's possible physically and you know what I mean, activity-wise. Going out there in the world and doing stuff doesn't become a form of escape. Suddenly meditation becomes a way of accessing greater capacity within the self. Not, I don't know how to deal with not being behind on my bills, so I'm just going to meditate and feel a sense of peace so like I think everything's okay. It goes, I take a moment to tap into meditation to get centered in greater clarity so I can take a look at the choices I've been making and start cleaning that shit up because my system is telling me something is fucking off. And so that becomes the imitation. And that is, and obviously I go into this in Creator, there's a whole framework around this, but it's knowing that, to what you're speaking to. Reaching outside of ourselves, thinking it will be the answer, is always the contradiction of existence. Doing it from the inside out, connecting greater within to then moving to without, you're always going to be in the sweet spot, because it will always be more honest, more authentic, more truthful, and it will be very much in the framework of connection. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is amazing. I mean, to think all this time, we were just the creators of our own, reality out here. We can make this, do you believe that we can make this experience kind of, it's not to become a utopia, but what's the next iteration here? But considering this, we live in a time where there is more awareness, and it seems to be creating more misalignment. You know, we see what's happening out in the world. Now where it's out right in our face, we have video evidence, and I feel like it's creating more and more division. Is it like by having awareness of it, we get to shine a light on it? Just like with that brother standing in the center, shine a light on the shadow. Collectively, we get to shine the light on the shadows of this planet.
And awareness is always relative. And we live in the time period of more information, more access to information, but that's not always succinct to awareness, right? So we can get a fuck ton of information, but we're going to filter it according to the capacity of awareness we're operating from. And so we have a ton of information at our fingertips, and we're still operating from a capacity of awareness that still believes there are positive and negative emotions, bro. Like, so now we get more information and our emotions come alive to it, and we still don't know how to process our emotions around it, still don't know how to redirect it. And so that's the dance but then with that, we still actually are living in an age of greater awareness, but we're still living with the struggle of processing the information we've been received, because where the awareness we're lacking is now showing itself. But just like you stated, exactly, you feel me? Mm-hmm. Because now there's still a lack of awareness. It's like with technology, right? We can keep advancing in technology all day, but if our emotional intelligence does not start to match that, right, we just become another civilization in the framework of greater distortion, till the point we have to regroup as a civilization, which just starts the whole sequence over again, which we've done plenty of times in history. So this time period now is exactly that. It's our next stage of human evolution toward the next iteration of our creative expansion, which to me is what you were referencing as the end game, right? It's more of what's the next iteration of our creative capacity, right? The next stage of our evolution as a species towards that is the evolution of our emotional maturity. And as that comes online, all clear pictures get clearer. Suddenly people start understanding why they're making the decisions they're making. Because we still have people thinking all kinds of justifications about what they do. And even like the woke culture, right? Where they think, because here's what's funny about the woke culture. When people live by the code of being woke, but they're still based in fear, they're actually not any more aware than anything else. Because again, life isn't built on fear-based functioning, and anything that teaches fear-based functioning is already in a misalignment. But the notion of understanding what something is offering for the purpose of living more honest within oneself, and therefore more contributive to what they're a part of, is the framework we're stepping into. But that happens.
Let me throw out another analogy on this, because that's very good. The climate movement. Since Al Gore wrote the book, Since an Inconvenient Truth, I feel like the climate movement has been rooted in fear. 100%. Only if what you're saying is true, if we were to approach it out of love for the environment, out of love for this planet, and largely broadcast, this is why things are happening, not because we're afraid of the result, but because we are because we are in celebration of this life.
100%.
That it would
have a whole
different
energy.
That it would have it was different energy, different result, different impact, different story, different meaning that we're giving it.
Exactly. And that goes back to our creative capacity, right? And this is why I'm so adamant about the first responsibility of our, right? Because I talk about all the time, we are power, we are life force energy. That means our first responsibility in existence is this creative energy, how we apply it, what meanings we give things, because these are all the gifts we've been given by Creator, by Source. And so we have to, then that becomes the invitation of using it more responsibly. And there's no greater way of using it more responsibly than honoring the first accountability, which is to carry and wield this power honorably, sacredly, purposely. And that is our homage or our ceremony to the thing that gave it to us, right? So then every time anything built off of fear-based functioning will never be sustainable. It will always have a shelf life. It will always come crumbling down eventually. And even predating Al Gore stuff, I remember reading The Flower of Life from Gianvolo Melchizedek, and he had fear written all over that shit because it was about climate change. And that was in the 90s. And it was like, it's irreversible and da 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 da. And it's like, that's not true. But he was, and that was in the 90s before that other concept. And because it's a constant relationship, we always have the ability to make an adjustment. There is such a thing, though, as creating the narrative in the loudest distortion possible that makes making the course of action change a different degree of difficulty. But that's just what we do to ourselves. And so then it becomes the next iteration of consciousness exploring how it makes the adjustment from there, because there's no stopping the train of life. You're either on the train or you're getting dragged by it, bro. And that's the essence of it. And so that's really it is. Like, the energy that we bring to the things we do dictate the nature of how it's experienced. There's just no way around it. And so in the world at large, every time we approach life from the outside in, we're always going to keep creating more distortion, because that's the direct contradiction to nature. Every time we do it from the inside out, it's always the alignment, because you're doing it from the deepest connection in the most intimate space outward, which ideally, if we're doing that, then we're living in the greatest awareness of self and all of creation. We're doing it from the greatest awareness of mind, body, spirit. We're doing it from the greatest awareness of emotional recognition. And so then there's more clarity when we talk, when we choose relationships, when we build.
I think we have to hold that same awareness for Sacred Sons.
Exactly.
As Sacred Sons is evolving, make sure we're evolving from the inside out.
100%, dude. Because remember, like, when this movement expanded really fast, right? And it's like, wow, this is building, and there has to be a centralized space. And we've talked about like what it means to hold a centralized framework that we keep moving from, because that's how it maintains stability and sustainability, right? 100%. And that's for all things. And it's fascinating, because that's the rule. That's the how the structure of existence works. If we live from the greatest connection within outward, we're always going to be living from the greatest degree of honesty, of authenticity, of integrity. But every time we live from the outside in, we're moving from the furthest awareness of that connection. And that's what happens with why we have to regroup sometimes, because things will then just get loud to be addressed, to make that adjustment.
And I think as we become more honest, as we get more clear, we come into contact with some of those what are known as like extrasensory experiences, the psychic connections, the telekinesis, the ability to like see the world with a new lens. And I gotta get here because I got the light being number one himself here. And we're in a time of alien disclosure.
Yeah, bro. Don't even get me started, bro.
I'm just getting you started, because we're gonna go there. Listen, I've been following, UFO culture, X-Files, alien disclosure for my entire life. I'm very fascinated by it. Maybe this is a psyop. Maybe we're supposed to be thinking about it. But it's coming to a head. It really is. In 2017, there's a New York Times article showing the gimbal, showing a little UFO type of thing floating across the screen. And so it's like being announced by world governments right now. We have this technology. We have come into contact with these beings, with non-human intelligence. What role does this play? How does this relate to our world? What do you see, Kevin?
And I'll tell you from actual direct contact experiences too, that had, like living in this framework, because right, like it's real. So one note on this, when we just make it practical, because it really is, it's just what big, right? Like, so it's difficult sometimes for people to wrap their head around, but it's all practical. Like when we sensationalize it, it gives it too much room to create narratives about it, right? And so that's when people are like, and then they do this. It's literally can be as simple as, yeah, so I had this contact experience yesterday with these beings, and they mentioned this and that. I'm going to get some lunch. Do you want some? I also got to pay my rent real quick, right? When we recognize it's all a part of the framework, because life is also multidimensional, and it is cosmic, and it is galactic. All it keeps doing as our awareness expands is exactly what you talked about with your son, right? A child goes family, home, home, neighbor, block, neighborhood, neighborhood, town or city, state, country, globe. And it just keeps building. Globe, planetary, interplanetary, interstellar, right? And galactic. And so it's another framework of just how vast the game is. Why it's a struggle for our species is because we still struggle, again, to make sense of our emotions as it relates to each other, to include another dynamic that is even greater beyond what we're used to. Because again, we're still struggling to make sense of our planet, right?
I would say we're struggling to make sense of our purpose on this planet as a humanity. I
love that. We're struggling to make sense of our purpose and our involvement. I think that's a great way, like our involvement in life itself, right? That's why people go, I don't understand what I'm doing here. And, I'm adamant about the fourth fact that we exist, therefore we matter. So if you exist, there's a conscious reason you were chosen. There's a purpose you carry and the impact you carry and your involvement. And so when I think of the extraterrestrial capacity, and because it's constant interaction, is because life is massive and it's diverse, and we also exist multidimensionally. And these are the actual reference points of existence, but we are constantly living into the maturation of that, because eventually we'll live so mature that we'll go, of course, right? Yes, and we'll move this next stage. And even like, again, our relationship to understanding that animals have consciousness and emotions is still something we're working through. You know what I mean? Like,
aren't we?
Like, you see what I'm saying? So like, if we're struggling to be like, oh yeah, that animal feels emotions around the idea of its baby being, it's like yes. And then now you're bringing in a whole nother species with a different advanced consciousness, right? It's a framework, and we still have our fear-based functioning.
The fear that like, oh, now we're not the alpha.
100%. And that's a difficult thing to process for a species that like loves to claim the idea of that shit, bro.
The identity of alpha.
100%. And people struggle to let go of their identity sometimes, right? Because humility is a difficult thing to process sometimes when you don't know how to be honest to with yourself. And so when I think of the notion of that, because, I'm always adamant about telling people one of the most dopest questions we could ask ourselves that will never be obsolete is, what else am I capable of? But in order to keep answering that, we have to keep tapping into realms that are initially unknown to us in our awareness, and we might feel some inadequacy. But if we don't know how to process inadequacy, we then start drowning that out with arrogance and cocky behavior and staying small in a container that we're familiar with, and we feel more masterful and not broaden our horizons. Mm-hmm. And so whenever we bump up against those edges and people feel that insecurity, discomfort, if they don't have the emotional maturity to process it, what do? They just keep stacking. And I think that's what happens. Well, I don't think that's what happens with a lot of our behavior patterns as humans, right? Like, so this notion of our reference point, right now we've kept our reference point just physical reality. And that's why all these other ideas of mysticism or multidimensionality or extraterrestrials become so confronting, because our reference point is off. Our reference point has been made smaller than the actual one that would support us living greater into our design. And that's why when I teach creatorhood, the first thing I do in class number 1 of CIT is introduce truth as a reference point and what that actually means. You know what I mean? Because it automatically broadens the scope of our reference point to something that holds us greater and never changes. But every time we make other things our reference point, we're in a constant limbo and flux of who are we? What am I? What does this mean? I don't know. But when you make your reference point a framework that can honor the simple and subtle and hold the magnitude, then that framework never changes, because all you keep doing then is living into the greater capacity of it. And then everything a part of it just indicates what it has to indicate, just like what emotions are for, thoughts are for, all the awarenesses. So this journey of life and understanding our multidimensionality and understanding our cosmic and galactic involvement, right, creates a greater framework of a greater picture that actually supports a greater understanding of purpose, not diminishes it. Because if people live this life not thinking we are very much interacting with the galactic, they've never actually understood how the sun works. You know what I mean? Or how, or gravitational pull on a planet, or relationships to moons and other, like, it's just, there's so much that we are constantly interacting with, and things have been interacting with our planet from space all the time, bro. It's all foundational. It's just, we've lived with such a limited scope about life that even starting to pay attention to it feels jarring to us or overwhelming, because we're like, I just want to go to work and pay a bill.
Get back to my video game over here.
Yeah, exactly. Let me just sit here and watch videos all the time.
Like, you know, like, because this can be so much that I'm not projecting on, you know, all of us have this, but it's like, I got to get back to my show, my series, because it's contained. Like, there's something safe in that show, in that series, in that video game, in that the finite games that we create here in this reality. Yes, we are interdimensional beings. You know, and I love how you mentioned the sun as a reference point of, like, yeah, we're in the cosmos. We feel the sun's heat every single day. We also go to the dream world every single day. There is a dimension that we go to, and none of us have a sense of, like, the significance of that place. Right. And then we have there's another theory, like the aliens, or maybe in the past they were known as angels and demons. And now it's like, are they humans from the future? Are they anomalous underwater beings that have been here the whole time? Are they extraterrestrial? Are they interdimensional? What's your take? Are they all of the above, Kev? I gotta know.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, it's all of the above, because the constant interaction with life, this planet, other planets, other civilizations, has been a constant. And what's funny about this is there's so much evidence that if we were just willing to explore it from an unbiased lens, we'd actually see how much it all syncs up, right? And we won't get so caught up in the specificities of what it might have been. We'll get clearer on the specificity of what it means for us. Part of the struggle is that we'll cling to theory, but theory is not an adequate reference point of anything. Experiencing the actual nature of connection and awareness is, if there has been concepts of greater civilizations, interactive beings with enough evidence to present the possibility, we then live in an experience of awareness that things in this game of life is bigger, right? But it's a relationship, right? It's a relationship of the practical and the magical, the known and the unknown, meaning the mystery of what else is possible and to tap into, and the clear experiential engagement that we have on a regular basis. And when I think of that, everything is a tool in that sense. So like you described, right? Let me watch this show because it's this little contained space. That is actually a great thing if we just use it as a moment to just be in the subtle for a moment of regrouping, of restoring, of entertainment, with the purpose of then getting back to exploring larger capacities. It's when we make that an escape in a dedicated space of energy that it starts to stifle the nature of us. Just like sleep. Sleep is not the goal. Rest is not the goal. None of that is the intention of life. I am going to tap into physical existence so I can just have really beautiful sleep on a regular basis and spend half the day in this comfortable mattress. I get a comfortable mattress so that my body restores properly for me to keep living into greater capacities of my design. It's all tools. And if we can recognize that, and we recognize the nature of the game, just like you touched on the dreamscape, in that space, that's the perfect example of our multidimensionality. In the dimension that we call the dreamscape, it's also the hub, it's also initial framework. When we transition, we explore constant creative energy with connectivity to different symbolic representations in physical and other frameworks to explore more creative energy. That's why we can have we can orgasm in our dreams, why we process emotions through our dreams in our physical form. It is another framework of reality creation that supports the system's processing of energy and access to insights. And if we could understand that, just like physical reality would actually understand the relationship of consciousness on a multidimensional framework, which is, again, one of the things I teach in creatorhood, so that it becomes more foundational, but not in a out of reach way, right? Like this practice is all about how you take these massive concepts and live it in a more practical application every day. And so even recognizing extraterrestrials or the possibilities of it, it's the same concept with even, if people struggle with it, it's also something I teach about the notion of conspiracies. Some conspiracies are accurate notions of things that are happening. Some are just people's stories about shit. Either way, it doesn't change the framework. If you have this awareness of possibility, what does it mean for you personally to keep living your life in a way that guides energy into greater forms of utility? And if we don't live into that framework, we're always going to end up creating distorted concepts of things that end up giving us more work to shift through rather than more clarity to operate from.
Even that's a great question. It's like if let's say you're stuck on a conspiracy right now. I know a bunch of people get stuck on those things. It's like asking the question, like, is this providing me greater awareness, expansion, and capacity, or less?
100%, right? Because as long as we can meet information and meet our fears, we can get energy moving to just receive it with greater clarity and then recognize the relationship of how it applies. And this is coming from someone who used to deep dive down the wellspring of fucking conspiracy theories and shit, bro. Like, and just knowing how to operate with supreme clarity and sense of direction. And then once understanding the structure of existence, I'm telling you, the simplicity of how life works on a multidimensional scale and our capacity to wield it in really beautiful ways is far more tangible.
It's miraculous is what it is.
It's miraculous. It's exceedingly beautiful. And it is far more tangible and reachable than people recognize most often. And that's part of this work of growing in awareness, is coming to recognize like just how fascinating and awesome life is, even when the circumstances may appear painful sometimes, right? And so it's a really powerful endeavor, and these are big concepts as we continue to grow, but far more practical when we start to know how to process and receive information cleaner, as we grow in this work.
And make no mistake, we always have to leave room for the unknown. Always. And the reason why I'm saying that is because my son Johan, who we were talking about from the womb to the tomb, really, there is room for greater expansion. I am still that child, that innocent child that I was when I came into this life. And so to think that I have arrived somewhere, that I know something, would be a disservice to my soul, which is still on mission, which is still here to experience into greater awareness and capacity. And so to leave that room for the unknown, because just like we're revealing neighborhood, galactic, and all that, I still feel like there's so much being revealed to me in this life and always. And so to never lose that childlike sense of wonder, of curiosity,
Wonder is the saving grace of all things, bro. Like, there's a reason why it's one of our mature emotions. It is one of the biggest keys to living greater and greater into the design. Because when we live in wonder, we're always living in the recognition that there's more to tap into, more to access, more to experience. It's vital. And that's also what we witness every time we see kids exploring the world freely. And that's also why we love it so much, because we're like, oh, kids, their imagination. We convince ourselves of different dynamics as we become adults, but you're absolutely correct. That never changes because, again, life is literally unlimited creative potential. You will constantly be exploring more of what it means to live, exist, be, experience, feel, flow with, and that is the relationship. And I don't even think it's that, that concept where people go, I know nothing. I go, don't get caught up on that bullshit. Right? When you go back to the nothing, it's like, you know plenty, and that tapping into more knowing never stops. You know what I mean? It's like, do not shortchange yourself based on the fact that you are always going to be exploring more of what's possible. Own what you have come to know, because you have to use that, and keep living it in the recognition that there's always more to become familiar with, know, live into, all that stuff. And that keeps the spirit of that childlike essence of us alive, dude. Because I tell this all the time, when people go, how do I navigate an argument? And I go, nothing saves a relational dynamic greater than curiosity. Nothing, right? The moment we go, we've been together this long, I know them already. Like, we're not people constantly living in greater exploration of self. If we just stayed in curiosity on a regular basis, we would communicate greater. We would meet each other greater. We would handle conflicts greater. We would keep exploring the possibilities of what can be. And it is that the affliction of our own conditioning when we use, I know, as a defense mechanism to meet the honesty of what we've been doing, because that's another one of those defense tactics. And because it's like this, like I get this a lot teaching when people go, man, I already met this already. I already did my mirror work with this already. Why do I keep experiencing it? I go, because there's still something to address. like you may think you're doing a thing, but if it keeps coming up, there's something there. And the fact that you won't be curious about it, you just stifle it with your judgment, is part of the reason why you keep experiencing it.
The way I say it is because you prayed for it. Like one way or another, you prayed for this to happen so that you could meet it in greater capacity. And now here's your shot. And so what are you doing? You're doing the, I know, I did this before thing, where the opportunity is actually to step in and choose differently.
Exactly. 100%. Something, if it's still happening, something's off. And here's even a beautiful example of this. I came back from Atlanta last month, right? And manifested, because all experience is reality, all illness is still reality creation, right? I got home, headache, fever, chills, all this stuff, right? And I could easily go, man, I got things to do. Let me just shift this and work through all this stuff. The moment I got home, I felt it in my system. Everything inside of me was like, be fully present with this now, right? And I have a bunch of work to do, right? Like different things I'm working on. And I go, okay. So I lock myself away. I like shut everything down, no communication outward, and I'll get to certain things that I get to when we get through this. I set myself down with every single facet of it, every single discomfort, every single, like the fever, the chills, all this stuff without, and I even fasted with it for 4 days. But when it really came on, that next day was the fullest. And I literally staying with it. I didn't even measure my temperature, but I know it had to be close to like 103, because the last time I had this access of like multidimensionally, and the concept of hallucinations, but it's really just tapping into different realms. Like, it was wild, right? It was like a medicine journey.
Yeah, COVID, or what are we talking about here? A flu?
That's what's fascinating. No COVID. Like, I think it was a flu, but it wasn't COVID. I even tested it, but it was just because, there's other sicknesses that still exist. But it was really fascinating because, I teach this all the time. Be with the things that are happening. If you have a headache, actually be with it, because it's telling you something. If you have this, right? Like, and so being with this, I started going through the history of my life, all decisions I was making, where energy was going, what things when I used to people please, when I had to address certain stuff, when I avoided. It was like literally this whole journey of just going through this process. And I could even, like, being that present with it, I could tune into the way my white blood cells were working as it was meeting the virus. It was just a fascinating experience, right? And it just so much insight about the nature of my life experience. And it was using every faculty of symbolic representation that was necessary. And then it was showing me the nature of where to clean up things, where your attention's going now, and what to move with. And all I had to do was listen to what I created to bring this to my awareness, right? Because I could sit here and go, sickness, oh no, judgment. But it was like, I'm going to be with this, because if I'm feeling this, especially with how healthy I live my life, there's a fucking reason. And from the insights of that, the next day, all the other stuff shifted. There was still a little achiness. So it was like, stay with this, right? Throughout another day, connect with these other facets. And then I came out of it with such clarity, right, of maneuverability and where to go, and started making adjustments. And it was so profound. And that's the nature of our life experience. It's the same thing with pain. Every time pain signals to us, it is telling us where something is misaligned. If we're willing to be with it and listen, we'll know what's misaligned to make the adjustment. But every time we make pain a demon and we just suffer it, we're not listening to what's being presented to us. Because again, just like you said, we pray it in. Life is reality creation. It's a gift we've been given. It is us emitting energy and us speaking life into things and us receiving the necessary things to invite us into that. And every time we receive an experience, we have our ideas on what we think we ought to be experiencing or what we think things are supposed to be like. And so then when it's different, we judge it instead of receive it. And if we just got used to recognizing how to receive where we are and know that our experiences are not lying to us, we could actually start to make sense of it more. But again, going back to the struggle of emotional maturity, that is our next stage of human evolution. Part of the reason why we don't receive our experiences properly is because of our emotional immaturity. We react in a way that, again, not in wonderment, because we're not staying curious, right? We react in a way that makes it some form of good or bad, right? Value judgment, instead of playing the proper design to receive it, process it, and utilize it, which that is always the foundational mechanics of existence, emotionally, in all forms of experience, mentally, physically, everything.
You know, what you named as emotional immaturity, I think is also related to the societal immaturity.
100%. Yeah, because all society is a relationship between people on a greater scale. So 100%.
And so I don't want to put it on every single individual that you created, how you got here, but it is your responsibility to take it from here. And so if you're looking for a place, if you're looking for a community, if you're trying to find your tribe,
yes, sir.
If you're a lone wolf, we're calling you in. Like this is the thing. It's like, I don't want to say like, hey bro, it's not your fault, but it's like, I'm not trying to come here with more problems. I got a solution. We have a solution, Kev, and we've seen some incredible transformations. You know what I'm saying? And we continue to see it. I love the fact that our community now, like every time we get together, it's a damn family reunion. That's healthy. That is healthy. Tracking each other over years now. We're 5 years in. We're still in our infancy, but the healthy aspect of it is the community, is the coming together, is the actually having something to look forward to.
Exactly. And just what you brought in, right? Like, even if people don't recognize this or live by the code of the belief and framework of reality creation, just what you stated is still a foundational enough reason, like, to live forward, which is, if you didn't even believe in that and you just feel like your experiences were thrusted upon you, you have it at your disposal to make different choices to go, but I will not continue to live like this. I will continue to do, right? And then we go back to having to have a sense of direction. I will now choose to do this because that's part of what we can, make decisions with. And that alone, if no one even understood the cosmic connection to all life or any multidimensionality, if you just recognize that foundationally, you have the ability to make different choices, that's enough to build upon a phenomenal fucking life. And then you get around other people who do the same. Just like you said, we got to try for it, we got a community. Now you start living in that solution-based functioning of, if this is where I am and something about this feels off, I can make different decisions to grow. If I lack awareness on certain things, I have places I can go for support. Sacred Sons. That we can build
beings.
Upon, bro. Light beings.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, bro.
I love these talks because it takes me so far and big and expansive, but then it brings it right back to like the things that are sacred and important and here and now. And personally, I love believing that it's all connected, and that it matters. I think we could use more belief in that direction, right? That our actions matter, that our behavior matters, that our choices matter.
Yeah. And an invitation to any brother listening to this, even if you don't believe that, if you just started to explore it from curiosity, it'll prove itself. Like if they just start, like they ain't gonna take my word for it. They ain't gotta take our word for it. I love what you just stated. You love to believe it, cause it's fucking dope. It constantly, having lived the experience I've lived for over 20 years, even before I started teaching this stuff, and I keep watching it happen, because the truth is the truth. Evidentially, it constantly reveals itself. But if people were just willing to keep that wonderment and curiosity alive, it will keep bringing them into greater recognitions of possibility. And that alone is enough to start shifting perspectives. You know what I mean? And it's powerful. And all that is an invitation. You know what I mean? Just an invitation. Just start exploring your connection.
Little sprinkle of invitation.
Yeah, a little invitation. Just sit with your thoughts and see how consistent you focus on certain things, and then see what that means for you. And suddenly information gets presented, you know? Yeah.
It's so good, bro. Man. It's so good. And that's what I wanted to say there. It's like, the immaturity is from that lack of community, the lack of initiation, the lack of rites of passage, the lack of connection to the earth. We're here to bring those things back. We said it when we started back in 2018 when Sacred Sons banner was officially formed, and we're still saying it. You know, we're here to return those things because they belong to us. They belong to us as men, as humanity, as brothers and sisters out here. Kevin, Walton, with that, is there any final message, prayer, freestyle, rap, flow, song, riddle that you would like to leave with the brothers and sisters who are still listening? They got this far. What do you got for them?
Yo, I love it.
A riddle would be dope, though.
I know. And actually, now that you say that, I'm like, I'm gonna make some creator-based riddles, bro. Like I'm forming that shit. You know, I love that. I actually, as you say that, I would say I'll close off with a kind of prayer / invitation, and that is for everybody listening. Let this be an offering and invitation for your life. If you could wake up every day and just state, may I stay open this day to all the possibilities of and for my life. May I continue to stay open to feel my emotions freely, receive the wisdom they offer me, and put them to more purposeful use. May I stay connected to all that I am a part of, that it may continue to make itself known to me greater and greater. And may I continue to live closer and closer to the truth of myself, that I may mature to be all that I am designed to be. And may I continue to surrender to the access of the greatness in me and contribute that in responsible ways to everyone and everything I love and that I hold sacred. That foundation, give yourself the permission to explore it in whatever words you choose, and may it serve you well and us all well, with you playing your part in the great game of life.
And so it is. Aho, so ashe, amen. I'm in.
Let's go.
Let's go.
I love my fucking life. Let's go.
Come and get this energy. Come see Kevin. Kevin, I mean, you're at Sacred Sons events. Anywhere else people can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Source Radiance. I'm going to start posting a lot more content on my YouTube again, Source Radiance on YouTube, and also through Source Radiance on Instagram. You can click the link in my bio and get access to the landing page to Creatorhood Initiate Training, which is the initiation into the pathway, the practice, and the operating system of Creatorhood, which we have the next round of phase 1 happening February 3rd. And the next one then will be in August. And we got a lot of in-person events coming soon with because I'm bringing back everything I used to do prior to COVID. So you can catch me at Sacred Sons events, at creative events in person that we got coming, at Light Beings gatherings and events. Also, you can catch me on the things I share on the Light Beings Instagram, which is at the Light Beings as well. And we got so much more coming.
That's what's up. Can you imagine if somebody came here because they saw you and they wanted to hear what Aaron was about? Aaron from their favorite TV show. They're like, I want to see what he's all about. They were like, dude!
Yo, that happens on my Instagram all the time. People go, I just came on here because I appreciate you on the show. This is dope what you're doing, right?
Aaron is deep, yo.
They'd be like, oh, Aaron really be preaching in life. Like, I never get all the time. Yeah. Oh, is he really a preacher? Oh, shit.
All right. For whatever brought you here, thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing this life. I decide, you decide, we decide. With that, Kevin Walton, Source Radiance, Light Beings, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We're out, family. Peace.
Peace.